Hey, everybody. Welcome to I'm Going to Ask Dad, where this young man's asking some wonderful questions of me. I think today's going to be a bit of a doozy. Uh, Welcome to our topic of alcoholism. If you haven't already, follow us on one of the platforms: Spotify, YouTube, Amazon.
No, we're not.
Amazon. We're on Amazon.
Wait.
Facebook, TikTok. We're getting better about making some short clips there. But check us out and come listen to what it's like to just talk about things. All right, man. What do you got for me?
Do you feel that your past alcoholism affects your life now, today?
Yes. Because if it wasn't for my alcoholism and my experiences in it, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Okay, then. Okay. So,
Actually, I had a good friend put this probably the best way I've ever heard it. One of the things I'm most grateful for today is my alcoholism, because it taught me. Breaking free of it, I was able to see that that's not who I want to be, and it's a lot easier to make choices to not be that person because I already experienced what it's like to be that person and know what it feels like to do that kind of stuff.
so this one might be pretty personal. You might not be comfortable talking about it in front of the camera, but when did you find out? When did you think you were an alcoholic? Start thinking it.
The day I decided, I hope you're ready for this answer, because I told your mom I'm going to be wildly honest with you about all things, because there are things you don't know about, and this is going to be one of those, okay? I decided to go to AA. I didn't believe I was an alcoholic. That wasn't my thought. I knew I needed help and I didn't know what to do. I was struggling with not drinking. I had not had a drink in some time, but I was wanting a drink badly. It was the weekend after I told your mother that I'd had multiple affairs with other women. Okay. I told her on a Friday night, and on Sunday morning, I messaged her and said I was going to go to an AA meeting that night. And like I said, believing I was an alcoholic wasn't my thought process, but I knew alcohol was a problem I had, as it led to a lot of that stuff. It wasn't the underlying thing that led to a lot of that stuff, but making those decisions under the influence of alcohol was a lot easier to do than it was when I'm sober. When I knew I was an alcoholic was that first meeting. I sat down, and as scared as I was, not knowing what anything in life was going to be at that point, the first person I heard talk that night, I got the impression that that person knew the inner workings of my soul, because they told a story that could have been right out of my journal. And I thought, wow, that man's being so open about something I've buried inside of me. And then the next person spoke, and it might as well have been the next page of my journal. And then the third person spoke. And for the first 5 speakers on 5 completely different topics, I realized I wasn't alone in how ashamed of myself I was. I realized that I wasn't the only person struggling with demons on the inside. I realized that these humans are humans, they've made mistakes. And I remember thinking wildly when I first got there and I pulled up and I was afraid to get out of my car, watching these people laughing and joking and having a good time, and their playfulness blew my mind. Like, this is AA. How are people having fun? How are the alcoholics having fun? The alcoholics were having fun because they learned that they could come back from the existence they'd had. And in order to do that, it took the courage to share their stories with one another, to share their stories with a newcomer. They all knew it was my first day, so they shared their stories about what it meant when they first walked in the door, what it was that they had gone through. And I got home that night, and your mom asked me how it went, and the only things I could think of to say to her were, "I'm an alcoholic."
So, do you think your recovery has led you to have a higher sense of self-esteem than beforehand? Just in general.
Yes. I don't credit it to recovery itself. I credit it to the work it takes in recovery.
Yeah.
Like, it is not an easy thing. For anybody that doesn't know what AA is, well, not, I guess that's not the way I want to say it. The process of AA includes the most important step I found in my process was step 4 and 5, I guess, really. And number 4 being to take a moral inventory of myself, to write down all of the things I held resentments about, all of the things I was afraid of, all of the things I hated myself for, and identify how I'd hurt others through my actions. That was a big step of accountability I'd never taken in my life. To sit down, the affairs being a great example, to sit down and say to myself, you did this. You made the decision. I don't care if you were drunk or not. It doesn't matter. You made the decision to have these affairs. You made the decision to hurt your wife. You made the decision to risk the family. Holding myself accountable for things wasn't something I had done before. I did what I wanted, and the world be damned with what they thought of it, because I just wasn't going to tell anybody anything. Holding on to secrets that big eats your soul. Lost my train of thought. the accountability. So, like, the step 4 being the accountability to yourself, right? Like, I like teaching myself, showing myself the truth by writing everything down, who I had hurt, how I had hurt them, and what was it about myself that led to that. 99% of the time it was fear, is what I learned about myself. For a man that portrayed as if he wasn't afraid of anything, I was terrified of everything. Terrified of everything. Terrified of the impact I, as a father, was going to have on you. Terrified of the impact of not succeeding at work. Terrified of the impact of, at the time, terrified of the impact of your mother finding out the things I'd shared with her. Because to sit and tell her those things and not face the reality that a divorce is likely after that kind of thing, I had to accept that might be the way this goes. And then the 5th step is the thing that got me, the piece where I broke down, is sharing, reading all of that to another human being. It was one thing to sit in my room and talk to a God that I was still trying to figure out a belief in, but it was another thing to have a man sit across from me in my living room and listen to everything I'd ever kept from everybody on the planet. All of the stuff that sat inside of my soul, I shared with somebody. I shared with him the anger I had at a guy that talked about some things that had happened between us. Anger. There was one point I was so angry, I walked away from the conversation somebody was having with me. I was so angry, I wouldn't even speak. I just left. Because I wasn't willing to face the truth of what was being said. What was being said was true. I just wasn't willing to face the truth of it. So what led to my alcoholism is it made a space for me to be able to be dishonest with myself. It was okay to forget about the things when I drank. They weren't there. I didn't have to think about them. It made my shoulders sag and I could relax because I wasn't going to be bothered by the things that were eating me alive. Then ultimately there came to a place where I realized how much of me was gone, that I had to do something different. What else you got?
That's all I have.
Well, follow-up questions. That's a lot of information. What do you think about all of that?
You did I don't have any follow-up questions. Do you have any questions for me now?
How do you think it affected you?
Well, I think I think it affected me in the way that I was afraid to talk to you about. I was afraid to talk to you about having ideas like this, since I was afraid you were just gonna. I was afraid you weren't gonna support me in the endeavors I wanted to take. You didn't notice that. I was like, you wouldn't know this, but when I wanted to talk to you about this, I was really hesitant to.
About the podcast?
Yeah.
What I recognize is that I parented the way I knew how to parent.
Yeah.
Right. We've had some discussions about that. And that came with a lot of expectation that you should know how to do something, even though you're a child, right?
Yeah, I learned from you. How am I supposed to know the stuff?
Right. And that's the example today of like, how can I teach you how to be part of the world in whatever fashion you're wanting to be part of it, rather than telling you how to live in it. Right. And it was one of those things where alcoholism, I was able to live in this bubble of I hate myself, but I didn't have to think about how much I hate myself because the alcohol let me not think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had such strong hatred for who I was. And when I drank, I was able to not even love myself, right? Like it's not like I took a drink and it made me love myself. I took a drink and it became flat. There wasn't hate, there wasn't love, there was nothing. It was able to sit in this void of the emotions again. And the only emotion that came from it was anger a lot of the time. And even when I wasn't drinking, that anger would come through because when that anger would come out, it wasn't the person that was receiving that anger from me that I was truly angry at. Really, I was angry at myself for not being the man that I wanted myself to be. And there were a lot of things about myself that I just would not accept. And because I couldn't accept those things about myself, I would get angry at others because then it wasn't about me. It was about them. So, like I said, if somebody tries to point a truth out to me, if you get angry at somebody, most of the time they back down and okay, you're angry. I won't do that. So then you'll have to deal with the thing. It's a way to control the world around you, and that's what the battle is. How do I control the world around me? The truth of the matter is, you don't. You have no control over anything. I can't look at that peace lily back there and tell it to grow faster. It's going to grow at the pace it wants to grow. I can't tell those lights to turn on. If I want those lights to turn on, I've got to walk over there and plug the tree in the morning if I want them on. They're not just going to turn on because I will it. I can't tell you to... I mean, you're a kid, so I can tell you to do a lot of things. I got to find one here. I can't force you to wear a bike helmet, right?
Yeah, a lot of the times I don't.
If it were something where I was going to say, this is an absolute must from me as your father, I would build a system of consequences around it, right? Okay, if you're not going to wear your bike helmet, I'm going to take away your electronics, which isn't a way I believe anymore. I think that the consequence should be directly tied to the action. So today I believe, if you were, arguing with me and fighting with me about it, but it was something I was going to be firm on, okay, I'm putting your bike away and you're not going to have access to it. You need to wear a helmet because of the safety or whatever it might be, right? But let's say, let's say the person in front of me at a grocery store is counting the change to pay exact change for their purchase, and it's taking a long time, but I'm in a hurry.
You can't tell them to just pay. You can't tell them to pay, and you can't tell them to pay more. They're gonna.
I can. I'm just going to look like an asshole.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I would have gone home and drank because why was I an asshole to that stranger? Or I can learn to have some patience. Or I can learn to leave and give myself enough time for the things I want to do. My control sits in the choices I make. I didn't have that perspective while I was actively drinking. My control applied to everything in my life. You used to get really upset with your mother when she would visit friends because suddenly I didn't have any control over it. So instead of trying to speak with her about what it was that was actually inside of me and what I was feeling about it, because I wouldn't face the truth of me, I would just get upset with her for spending time with friends. What good did that do either of us?
Not much.
Let me ask this. Up until I was like, hey, I'm going to quit drinking because I'm an asshole when I drink. Did you ever think there's something wrong or off with the world you were being raised in?
No, because I didn't have any experience with any other kind of world.
Like it just seemed like this is how the world is, hey?
Yeah, it was like it just seemed like something every child my age has to go through.
Right, like that's just what it is. Like I shared with you last night with my dad yelling if you ever walked up a ladder on a roof job empty-handed, and how he would always yell, why are you coming up that ladder empty-handed? That idea of like, oh, everybody goes through this. So when I got older and I realized other people would walk up the ladder empty-handed and not think anything of it, Like, I don't have that ability. Like, if I'm working, I'm doing something in almost every movement I make because that's how I was raised. So for a long time, it was easy for me to work next to people and think they were a terrible employee or a coworker because they would not be as efficient as me in some aspect. You know, they just weren't raised the way I was, where everything had to be efficient. They're living their world in which they understand how to live their world. As one thing I'm grateful for, in like, because it's been a little over 3 years now since I've had a drink, 2 years since I started AA. I think one of the greatest things it's afforded us is the ability to do this right here, right? Like, if it wouldn't have been for that, at what point do you be comfortable enough to ask me questions about anything? Because as far as you knew, having a different opinion was going to get you yelled at, right?
Yeah. Is that all the questions you have?
I think so. Do you have any new ones come up?
No.
Call it a wrap?
Yeah, I guess that's a healthy length this episode. I mean,
Pretty good, yeah.
yeah, we are going to cut.
A little shorter than we've had them.
I mean, yeah, we are gonna. Yeah, we are gonna cut. Wait, we are gonna have a special guest come on, maybe.
Maybe. Well, yeah. Hopefully, we'll see though. If not, I'm sure I could find somebody that would join us for a different perspective as well, though, because I know some people.
Yeah, like your friends at AA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it would, one of the key tenets of AA is that it is anonymous.
Oh, yeah.
So like that's why you'll never hear me speak about somebody else's story that I've heard. Because it's not my story to tell.
Yeah.
But I do know people that are, open and willing to tell their stories about their alcoholism. And honestly, I'm thinking of one that I think would probably be a really great one for you to hear, because it is such a beautiful showing of the difference AA can make in a life. Like mine's significant, right? I wasn't. I won't say anything. There are different degrees. There are different ways people drink. Like there were people that drink less than I did. There were people that drink heavier than I did. There are people that drink heavier than me that don't have a problem. They could just stop if they needed to. Um, but yeah, I think I know some people that would probably be willing to talk with us. And I'll reach out and see if we can do that if the other episode, or we just do them all anyways. Honestly, so I know some people would probably love to do it regardless of whether we do what we're hoping to do with this, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah. That's a wrap.
Thanks for checking us out, everybody.
Bye.